Good evening, everyone. My name is McKinney Marsden. I am the owner of Bittersweet LLC, consulting agency, advocate, and wife of wrongfully convicted Ricardo Marsden. You can find more information by visiting bittersweetnyc.com. And today we also have my wonderful co host here.
Hey everyone, this is Lulu. I am the founder of South Carolina for Restorative Justice. I am a statewide ambassador with Reform Alliance. I work with the Empathy Network with Dream Corps Justice, and I am a member of the National Plus Coalition. And, I just want to say before we get started on today's conversation that it really is impactful to be a part of a grassroots organization. I do strongly believe that people who are closest to the problem are closest to the solutions that can be adapted all across this country in order for the United States of America to take some responsibility for the brokenness within the criminal justice system and afford people who are currently incarcerated some second chances. And so, as we talk today about wrongful convictions, misconduct, and cover ups, I just like to bring light to some of the men and women within the institutions inside of South Carolina that I know to be wrongfully convicted. I've had their information, and it's just unfortunate. And it would really be a great service for humanity if we could start to see some changes around some of the things that actually take place for those who are wrongfully incarcerated. So, just in remembrance, I'd like to make mention of Carmen Rice, who has served approximately 15 years behind the walls in South Carolina Department of Corrections um, for a conviction that was made solely on statements and people were not physically present. And so, I'm looking forward to seeing her come out on this side of the wall and be a part of us as far as what is good and what is right. I also want to make mention of Theron Guster Disley, someone who is being held within the South Carolina Department of Corrections. And, he just needs an opportunity to be able to have someone take a look at his case. And then we have the issues of parole revocations, where the revocations were actually dismissed. And I have a young man by the name of Devin Stanton who's being held after the charges or allegations against him that caused him to have a parole revocation were dismissed. And then I also have Musa Banshee. Musa Banshee was picked up on a parole violation in 1993. And he was then, the charges against him were then dismissed. Musa Banshee is still inside of the South Carolina Department of Corrections, and he has been denied parole 14 times. And so, we just want to make mention to the lives and the families that are impacted. We want to let people know that we're here and we're fighting for them. And then we also have to always mention Ricardo Marsden. He's a family member to us all, and his wife sits on this platform with us as a host to fight and be a voice for many other people. And so today we'll hear from uh, Marvin Cotton Jr., and also Garther Ree Hinson. And if you'd like to go ahead and introduce Marvin, can you please do so?
Sure. I'm pleased to announce our first speaker, Mr. Marvin Cotton Jr., who is an exoneree that spent 19 years wrongfully incarcerated for murder due to withheld evidence and false statements by a jailhouse informant. In 2020, he was exonerated and released from prison with the help from a newly created conviction integrity unit in Wayne County, Michigan. Mr. Cotton is a motivational speaker, social activist, justice reform activist. He is the founder and CEO of Better Not Broken LLC, founding member of National Organization of Exonerees, board member of nonprofit organization Debunking False Jailhouse Informant Testimonies. Welcome to the show and thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me, Lulu and McKinney. Most certainly appreciate being here. Anytime I can, share a stage to shine a light on wrongful convictions and, the dirty little secret that goes on here in America. I'm always happy to do so. As you said, I spent 19 years, 7 months, and 12 days in prison for a crime that I didn't commit. I spent, all of those days fighting in order to get out of prison. There's nothing worse than being kidnapped by your government for something that you didn't do, and then have to fight your government in order to prove that you didn't do it, only to walk out of prison and not necessarily be helped by your government in order to get back on your feet. So you have multiple different issues there. And
Mhm.
although I fought my way out of prison in order to establish my innocence, thankfully we have a conviction integrity unit here in Wayne County, Michigan, and we're trying to get them everywhere. Um, Although we have that, you have a government agency or a department within a government agency that is seeking out to find wrongful convictions. It's still not easy. My case was investigated for 2.5 years by the Conviction Integrity Unit before I walked out. That's 2.5 years um, that I was in prison, where I could have been murdered in prison. I could have been hurt in prison. I've lost family members, lost friends, have died while I was in prison for those 20 years. You can't get those experiences back. You can't get that life back. My daughter, she was 2.5 when I was arrested. She was a grown woman when I walked out of prison. Can't get any of that back. A lot of the children in my family, I got out of prison, they have children. You can't get those experiences back. Nor could I even enjoy it, even from inside of prison, because, you're in prison, but I'm fighting for my life. So I never was in the mindset or the emotional mindset to be able to enjoy new life coming into my family because I'm fighting for my life. So there's a lot of layers to, wrongful conviction. And that's not even to speak about every time you have a wrongful conviction. That means that there's some guilty person in society victimizing more people.
Mhm.
There's no peace for victim's family when you have the wrong person. And it hurts even more when the government is pointing their finger at somebody, convincing the family that they have the right person when they have the wrong person. Now the family is being victimized again. And sometimes they believe that so deeply that even after you're released, they still believe that because it came from the government. We were, raised to believe that what our government say and do is truthful. Uh, but in most of America, they won't even admit that wrongful convictions even happen. Say they got it right every time. I've
Mhm.
had attorney generals, not in Michigan, but I've had attorney generals in other states tell me that to my face. Like they've never seen a wrongful conviction before. I'm living, breathing proof that wrongful convictions happen. I'm living, breathing proof. So it's impossible to look at me and say that wrongful convictions don't happen. But I'm also living, breathing proof that with the right system put in play in order to check the government, where the government can check itself, I'm living, breathing proof that the system can work. A conviction integrity unit, it may be a different name, where you from, but it's necessary, especially when you're dealing with a system that was set up in order to be weaponized against black, brown, and poor white, and poor people, period. So when you have a system that's been weaponized in order to target certain segments of America, you have to have a counter in that same system in order to go back and correct those things. And you also have to begin to take a look in order to get better people to do those jobs, because the system isn't some robot. The system is ran by people. And if bad things are happening, that means you have people in these seats of authority and official doing bad things for other people. Now, there's a lot of people in America that really don't care about wrongful convictions because it don't touch their family. So they think it doesn't touch their family. Well, let me tell you a little something about wrongful convictions. If you think that it doesn't touch your family, you're paying taxes to keep an innocent person in prison. You're paying taxes to keep an innocent person in prison while a guilty person is victimizing more people that one day may be you. Anytime the system is broken anywhere, the system is really broken everywhere, because it's impossible to expect justice when these big corporations are fighting in the courts. You know, you got the rich people, they're fighting in the courts with these civil suits, but these are the same judges that's overseeing criminal appeals. They're not different judges. These are the same judges. So if those judges are broken and viewing criminal cases a certain way, as if innocent people are not locked up, what kind of justice can they do in civil matters? So you can't have a system that is broken in certain places and think that the American society is moving in the very best direction that it can. It's impossible. America is a great experience, a great experiment, but it's all interconnected. If you're stepping on what you consider the bottom of society, it's going to affect every part of this society. That's why things are so crazy as it is now, because they say that anywhere between 5 and 10% of people incarcerated are innocent. So that means that everybody that should be standing in their shoes are out in society raising hell, making the police departments work hard. And anytime you have wrongful convictions, you actually have criminals in law enforcement. So now you have criminals in law enforcement locking innocent people up or doing things, hiding information, which is one of the biggest things that leads to wrongful convictions, which is called Brady Violations, where officers are hiding information and not turning it over to prosecutors. And if they don't turn it over to the prosecutors, then the prosecutors can't turn it over to the defense. And they usually hide things that would go towards a person's innocence. They don't want you to be able to go to trial and show a jury that they had 10 other suspects before you. So the jury, you know, you go to trial, the jury be like, well, hell, you sitting in the courtroom and, you know, they never talked about nobody else, but you went to court not knowing they had 10 other suspects. So we have criminals in the law enforcement. So that needs to be checked. But the biggest problem that's wrong with our criminal justice system is people are not interested. People are not involved. The voters don't attach their vote to having good people in office. Sometimes they vote because of popularity, but most times they don't vote at all. And I don't mean to get sidetracked, but it's attached. We are the only people, Black people, we are the only people to where you got to have some sort of gimmick just to register us to vote. We don't want to vote. We don't want to participate in the system. And we understand why, because the system has messed over us for so long that we turned off by it. But when you don't register to vote, you don't end up in the jury pool. So how can you have a jury of your peers if your peers won't register to vote?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you don't register to vote, you don't end up in the jury pool. So you don't have anybody in the jury that understand the environment in which you come from that would be able to see the lies. Like, hold up, that don't happen in the hood. I know that don't happen in the hood. I was born and raised in the hood, and that story don't make sense. But when you have people on the jury that don't understand that dynamic, then you get what you pay for lack of better words. Voting allows you to check judges, because judges, state judges, have to run for office. So if they know you don't vote, they're not worried about you when they give your nephew a 40 to 60-year sentence for something that he probably should have got probation for. They're not worried about you firing them with their vote because you don't even register to vote. Prosecutors have to run for office. Prosecutors get in office with votes. They get fired from office with votes. So if you want to check prosecutors, you have to vote. You have to get involved. Now that's one aspect. Second aspect is citizens, real Americans have to get involved and from an oversight standpoint. Let our officials know that you're watching. Let the judges and the prosecutors know that you're watching. Call down there, have meetings with them. Call lawmakers. I just spent the other day I went to Lansing and I spent about 9 hours up there. Lansing, Michigan. Lansing is the capital of Michigan. That's where all the lawmakers at. I went up there and I walked through their offices and I walked through their buildings. I had some scheduled meetings with some lawmakers, but I also met with a lot of lawmakers that I didn't have schedules with. I seen a name on their door. I said, I know this person, I know what they stand for, and I know what they stand against. I want to talk to them. I want to see where they stand on these issues with prison reform and justice reform. And I went in there and I sat down and I talked to them. I spent my whole day. Any citizen can do that. Any citizen can go talk to your lawmakers. You find out what they got going on. You find out when they're in session. You find out when they're not in session. You can kind of get an idea of when they're going to be in the office. Knock on their door. Call up there. Send them letters. Let them know I'm an American and you're going to represent me. Either my vote going to back you or it's going to back your opponent, or my vote going to get you out of office. We have to get more involved. Wrongful convictions, there's many things that leads to wrongful convictions. All of them comes back to our own hands as citizens, where we have to begin to check our government by not doing us right. We can't keep screaming and protesting and hollering, and then we won't go vote. We won't write a letter. We won't send an email. You know, we won't back our aunties and our uncles and our cousins to get in office. You know, every time somebody in our family try to do something positive, everybody tearing them apart instead of backing them. You know, you got some good people in your family, back them, put them in office. Let them do justice. Because right now we're not getting it.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. Go ahead, McKinney.
Oh no, I'm just listening. But you can go ahead and introduce our next guest.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think that you said more than a mouthful, but very needed for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Our next guest and his story is a little touching for me. So, our next guest, his name is Garther Ree Hinson, and he is actually someone who has been wrongfully incarcerated in the state of South Carolina for the past 10 years. He's just recently returning home after a post-conviction relief win, should we say? And he is, he's been out since November, and he has a very touching story that I would like for him to share with us in regards to how he came to be, just whatever you can share with us in regards to your story about it, and just what it looks like, so that people understand how this has traumatized and impacted you, and everything that you have gone through to try to fight for your freedom. So I'm so glad to see you here today. And I hope that, you will at some point in time soon be a voice for those who are unable to speak for themselves because they've exhausted all of their options and they don't have a way to get in front of the court system.
Okay. Well, my name is Garther Ree Hinson, and I'm gonna be speaking a little bit about my case, and which you stated. Some of the things that I know what I do not understand, is because, like he was stating, they put certain people in certain positions, like they have people that commit crimes, and just because they want to get their man or get someone, they'll go out beyond their job. So my story is a little bit that I can share because my case is still open, You get what I'm from? So I'm limited to certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm gonna brief you some of the things in which this is in black and white. Okay, when you state certain things, it's a lot different from when you have physical evidence that's in your possession. That it can cause a lot of confusions as well. But in my case, four of us, four of my co-defendants, which included myself, all of us got charged with the same charge. You know, my reporting officer, his name is Sheriff Sam Parker. He's an officer that went to prison, for inmate conduct and several other charges and stuff like that. But he's the reporting officer over the case. So if he's the sheriff over the whole county, I'm pretty sure, it's others that was involved and tied in with him as well for him to do some of the things that he done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, two out of the four, two is too tall and too short. Okay. But by me taking them to trial, for a speedy trial in which I'm entitled to a speedy trial, you know, they set a date and everything was pushed in. But when the date came, you know, they couldn't get in touch with the victim, they stated, so they didn't want to do the trial. Now, this is after like 14 months of being in the county jail, you know, and so by them doing that, they reduced the bond. I bonded out. I remained on the street for like 6 months. And this was in 2013. The case is in 2012. It started in 2012. I bonded out. I stayed out for a little, for just not even got enough time to even do anything really, with family or anything like that. So we put in for a dismissal. When I put in for the dismissal, the judge asked it, why come my trial have not been done? So, and they came up with another excuse, so the judge stated to them, the next time that the courtroom opened up, you are to have Mr. Hinson's case. If not, it is going to be dismissed, understood. And that's a direct order. So if you wasn't ready in this time frame of 14, 15, 16 months or so, what's make you going to be ready in 30 days? So here go some of the things that was prepped up to put me incarcerated, like they supposed they got, like DNA and stuff like that. They used a jumpsuit, a gun, a mask. Now all of these things, all of this evidence right here is registered to the other tall co-defendant. But by me having the heart and I know that I did not commit a crime, by taking them to trial, and I'm entitled to that. So they take their evidence and place it at my trial. Now, Exhibit 1 through 9 was entered into evidence at the beginning of the trial, and meaning that I have SLED paperwork stating that the evidence was sent back to them, and it has been in their possession a year, like close to a year and a half before the new trial has started. Like this evidence has been sent back; it hasn't been examined or anything, and I have paperwork as well showing that. But yet, the DA still brings it into the trial. You understand where I come from? Which this is prejudice material used against me to cause the jury confusion. Okay, but if my lawyer would have suppressed the evidence, it would have never came in. You understand? So this stuff right here, it brought harm and hurt towards me, so it made me look guilty. Okay, they stated that I rented a vehicle. I didn't even have license. My name is not even on a rental car contract, but they entered that inside the evidence too. Okay, video was subpoenaed, provided. No one seen the video, but yet my lawyer allowed a snapshot picture to enter evidence without any objection. Now, come to find out that snapshot picture. See, I didn't realize it at the beginning of the trial because I was limited on the motion disclosure. You see what I'm saying? So, like, I didn't have anything to fight my case with, anything. So once I got down the road, I started digging into my case. I started pulling up the laws, start looking into it, like going back over everything, and I was like, hey. Some said I had an opportunity. I contacted my mother. My mother stated that they had that same picture came from Facebook that they allowed to enter evidence, stating there was a snapshot picture from the video, which is Exhibit 8. It said it was a snapshot picture from the video showing that I rented the vehicle. Well, come to find out, that snapshot picture came from Facebook because it's all over Facebook. It's the color picture, which is prosecutorial misconduct. And I have all that evidence inside. That's in my case now in my possession as well, and several other copies. Okay, So they use a snapshot picture evidence, and none of this is evidence against me. Then they stated that the victim remembered my voice from childhood. Now, meaning now, he stated from childhood, I am like 28, 29 at my trial, and I haven't even took the stand. Now, if you take and these, you said the guys who committed the crime had a mask on their face. So if they have a mask on their face, if you bring your hand close to your mouth, your voice change. You see what I'm saying? So how would you allow that type of evidence to enter evidence, at all? So if he would have had a Jackson versus Dino hearing, so I feel like, it's more than just the officers. I feel like it's a lot of people that's tied in because of my case, and it's kind of nervous and nerve wracking due to the fact of, you have to think about, like, you have people that's using things that's not true to just convict you, as if, like it's like it's your life means nothing, and it
Mhm.
hurtful. You have to be in certain situations, and please, bear with me, because it's kind of heart touching, because I went through, like, I almost lost my life behind the wall, like, there's nothing to put me in prison or anything that put me there in that position or anything, but I just feel like, it could have been, like, why me? You know, why anyone? It's not just about me. It just also opened the door to show others, how corrupted this is. And like I said, I stated, I have evidence. I have proof. I'm not just stating these things like, some people will state certain things like it's all in the transcript on its own. And now, back to, not to get off track, but back to, after all this evidence was entered, they used the little co-defendant. Now, listen to this part. They used the little co-defendant that was red-handed or whatever, so-called the short co-defendant, meaning, which I stated, it was one tall and one short committed the crime, but they locked two tall and two short up. Okay, the little guy, the short guy, his name is Richard Martin. You know, he committed crime. He stated that he armed robbed, he kidnapped, he high aggravated assault, and everything. And he reflected to the jury, who was there with you? He pointed at me. Okay. Now, meaning he stated to them that he knew Maurice Anderson, but he didn't know me. So therefore, that goes to show you why he's gonna take up for his friends, because I'm not his friend, for one. Okay. So once 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 I got sentenced, this is the crazy part. Once I got sentenced in 2014, 2 years later, something said, just check this out. So I called my mom. I spoke with my mom. I gave all of my co-defendants' name and stuff. She pulled it up on the website. Now listen to this. Everyone charges have been dismissed, and they all stated they committed the crime throughout the transcript. It's in black and white. They all two confessed it to the crime. Richard Martin, Maurice Anderson, and one became a witness. That's what it stated. It's in black and white. Now, meaning, you dismiss everyone's charges because I lost on a direct appeal. Once I lost that direct appeal, they opened the door for them. They dismissed all of their cases. I have it in black and white. It's on public index, each one of them. You see, and meaning, the little co-defendant that stated that he wasn't promised anything for prosecution or anything lenient, his on his charges it says dismissed because not indicted. Now, question: if the case started in 2012, it's a statute on indictment, and meaning now, in 2014, if you wasn't indicted in 2012, but meaning in 2014, you admitted to on the stand of committing a crime. You see what I'm saying? But so 2 years later, your case is dismissed in 2016. Not disposition judge is the solicitor, not the judge. You see what I'm saying? Like, no one came to prison. No one got charged with anything once I was sentenced. You know, and it's hurtful because I have the heart, and I went up against them. By me going up against them, they did everything that they could to sentence me. Not meaning, not I had a sheriff wife on my jury. The judge, he he removed it, the half brother, on his own. But when the DA protected the record and brung to the judge's attention that it's the sheriff's wife that's on the stand, he allowed her to stay. He said those questions was used to the best of their ability, and that, like, as if that's my fault. But my thing is, if you can remove her, I mean him, you can remove her. So why would it be? You see the difference? Yeah.
So you had a half brother of a relative of whom on the jury
No,
that was.
no, they had a half a brother. You know when they ask the question, pardon, I apologize. When they ask certain questions, they ask the jury questions. Do you have are you related to any sheriff or the Chesterfield County Department? And the half brother, he never said anything himself. No related. They're like the same. They're in the same boat. So
Mhm,
he looked it up. He looked it on his own. He seen it, and he removed it. Him. Now the DA brought it to their attention.
mhm.
There was a sheriff wife on the stand. The judge let her stay.
So
Mm.
the sheriff's wife that was on the stand was the sheriff that was prosecuting your case, or
No,
was
he
it?
was a sheriff. He was a sheriff. It was a sheriff wife that was in Chesterfield County. He was an officer in the same county. He
Mm,
was like the Chesterfield County officer, and he allowed her to stay on the stand. And even after it was brought to his attention, and
Mm.
like I went to trial on 3 charges, armed robbery, kidnapping, high aggravated assault. On the bottom of the high aggravated assault, it states if if you find Mr. Henson guilty of this offense, stop deliberating and knock on the door. If you find him not guilty, please consider the lesser included offense. Now that's coaching. You see what I'm saying? Like I went to trial on 3 charges, not 4. You don't substitute certain charges and stuff like that, and it's kind of ridiculous because the system, like I stated, for a person to have not indicted and stuff like this, it's someone else that's inside the system, that's doing something different. Like they're all working together. And see, this the part. Now my case been overturned. You know, like some people may think I'm out on an appeal bond or something like that. And which I'm not. Because I go back to the beginning. It's not like a waste of my time. I'm entitled to a new trial. You see, so by me coming back, now they're like, whoa, we have to open up the rest of the case. See, all my co-defendants, they're charged dismissed. You see what I'm saying? So everyone looking like, wow, you come back and all their charges dismissed, and they like, did they take a plea? No, they didn't take nothing, anything. Yes, all this, and it's kind of
Wow.
ridiculous because now here I am now after nine close to right at 10 close to 10 years of fighting this case. Case overturned, and here I am back again to where I have to fight again. I have to continue on. Why come I can't get the same thing they got? This is
Mm.
prejudice. Yeah, I'm entitled to the same thing. It's nothing to put me there. A man asserts his innocence. There's nothing to put him there or anything. And guys that could tell you they commit a crime just because I fight the system and I go against, you let all of them go just to get me. And now I'm going through a situation to where, I mean, I want trial. They don't want a trial, anything. I just want someone to, it's just like I can't do it by myself, you know, because it's very hard, coming home and with your kids, time off your life that you lost, you know, like I done been through it all. Like I could have lost I was in that Lee County riot, like I got stabbed in the eye, like I could have lost my life. I could not be here today to be able to say this, to share this, like,
well, you
Mm.
are, and we're so glad to be able to just look at you in the face. Um, ooh,
Yeah. Well,
um,
definitely congratulations on your conviction being overturned.
Absolutely.
But one thing I want you to know is don't think you can't do it by yourself, because you already know, because you've been through it already. You go to prison by yourself.
yeah,
Um, so you have to fight and be prepared to fight, by yourself. And if anybody that go along with you, then all right, cool. Um, but you have to keep positive and keep pushing.
I mean, like I stated, I studied my case for 9 years. I mean, the whole time, and I started getting little piece by piece because it's nothing that I can do besides utilize my time in the right way. Besides, like you stated, you know, you can do it for yourself. I mean, I did it as well myself, and by the grace of God. because the lawyers, I sat down and I provided the allegation, that's pertaining to my case, I pertain like 10 of them, and I was lucky to get one, you know, and I didn't ever give up. I kept pushing. They once I got the case overturned, they put in a motion of reconsideration that took like forever, 10, 11 months for a response. And once the judge respectfully denied them, you know, then they put in a appeal to Supreme Court. Like you steady fighting. I meaning now you steady fighting the case, and everyone else charges is dismissed. Like, and they told you they committed the crime. So why come are you fighting me so hard? Why is it? You know, why is it that you're trying to cover up all these things that you've done to me as if it's nothing? You just want to really just close the case with any type of conviction, But I'm not taking anything due to the fact of, I know I did not commit a crime, and I'm entitled to do this, to go forward for trial if that's really what I want,
Right.
because
Because
I'm
you want the
prepared for
truth.
that.
Yeah, and you want the truth to be heard. I mean, and I
Yes.
think that that's, for anyone that I know that's wrongfully incarcerated, you have a lot of people and they're like, why don't you just take this lesser charge so that you can get out of prison so this can be over for you? And you're like, but no, I didn't do any of this. And this isn't a scarlet letter that I deserve to carry. And,
Right.
and unfortunately, that's a big part of the problem, just in general. Like Marvin said, 5 to 10% of people are wrongfully incarcerated. Earlier today I heard 15, and they're okay with that. And so, thankfully you were able to still have a leg to stand on to actually have your voice to be heard, have your case to be heard. I know, we've heard stories of people who just didn't know how to fight the system, how to combat what's actually going on. And, a lot of people who get stuck in the pleas because it's so much stress, it's so much pressure. It's like you'd rather just take a plea than to continue to see your mother or your family going through the stress and anxiety of these cases and the possibility of trial, and knowing that once you get to a trial, you're not going to sit on a jury of you're not going to have a jury of your peers. And in your case, having a sheriff's wife sitting on in your trial, I mean,
That's
and
very
I don't know,
misconduct.
I just can't. I almost can't even stomach the thought of that in itself. But to have an opportunity to be able to be heard, and then have your case, basically like they're saying, no, you shouldn't be in prison, and then you're still out here fighting it, because they don't want to just dismiss it. I think maybe, I'm not sure, maybe they just need to kind of really review the information. Maybe they haven't had the time to do that with COVID and everything kind of in play. But I think that that's what's fair and what's right. And I think that every day we hear people justifying why people are serving 42 years in prison for 19 grams of crack. And we hear why it's justified, why people are serving natural life sentences and they don't even have victims because they had a situation before they were an adult, and then they had a situation as an adult, and now you're a habitual offender, so we're going to throw you away in the trash and just lock you up for the rest of your life. There are so many circumstances in which we're always finding a reason to say that incarcerated people should be punished more. And then when we do find instances when people should be released, people should have opportunities at second chances, people should be able to be reunited with their families and watch their children grow and become whoever they're going to be. It's kind of like, I don't I'm not getting ready to say that I was wrong about something so deep and heavy, because, then what does that mean? Are we just looking at Garther Ree's case? Are we looking at his case? Are we looking at 17 or 25 others? There was a case of, I believe it was a police chief in Chicago just recently, because of the misconduct that he allowed on his watch, and this was a Black man, there were 153 cases that were vacated.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the problem is overall is that we have so many people who are needing a voice to be heard, needing someone to listen. And because of the fear mongering that's put out in regards to those who are incarcerated, it's like we're trying to free wild animals. I want to have a coyote. He's a good person. I'm telling you all these positive things about him, and they're like, no, we don't keep coyotes in the house. We keep them in warehouses with doors that close and lock, and we put them through these situations. And so I don't
I,
know.
I think for the first time, um, uh, people are starting to see
Yeah.
incarcerated faces through advocacy work that's being done out here. I spent 20 years in prison, and early on, you didn't hear about a lot of advocacy work being done. You didn't, families wasn't stepping up. Wives wasn't stepping up. Wives now are unifying.
Mm-hmm.
Wives now are making noise in America about wrongful convictions and um, a separate issue over sentencing, overcharging. For the first time, you have podcast shows like this.
Mm-hmm.
Things like this didn't exist 5 years ago.
No.
Mm-hmm.
It most certainly didn't exist 10 years ago. So things are changing. And a part of the problem is the public has been allowing themselves to ignore this because it's not in their face.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
That's
right.
why what we do is so important, because we have to educate and we have to put a face to what's going on. If people really sat down and thought about all of the innocent men and women that are in prison, dying, dying, I don't think real Americans walk around and allow that. But
No.
when you don't see it and you're not hearing about it, it's easy to pretend like it doesn't happen. You
Yes.
know,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had, I've had a lot of conversations every day. I've done a lot of shows, and I've met with a lot of lawmakers and judges and prosecutors. And after I have a conversation with them, oftentimes they are like, wow, like, wow, their
Um,
perspective changed just by sitting and talking to me. And they are part of the system that are funneling us through the prison pipeline. And they still are unaware. I've talked to judges that was like, after hearing your story, I'm going to make sure I look at cases differently, because they're looking at it with such blinders on it that they're believing everything that police officers say.
yeah.
Um, they're believing everything that prosecutors say. They're looking at appeal issues as if somebody's making it up. So our voice in this space is so important. But I always tell those that are born into privilege, the privilege of their skin. Um, 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 I don't. It shouldn't be a privilege, but that's the reality in America. But I always tell white people that in this space, your voice is louder than mine,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because they can always attack me and say, "Hey, you pulling the race card. The system don't mess over black people. There's nothing going on. I'm a good person. I have a couple of friends that are black, and you don't know what you're talking about." But when a white person say the same thing that I'm saying, that is working in the system and working to correct the system, it's hard for them. They can't say that about them. They have to
Mm-mm.
listen. They
Right.
have to listen. Um, so when I go to speak at colleges and universities, I love to talk to the students, because they're going to it's law students, they're going to occupy those jobs. and especially when I talk to white students, because they're the ones that's gonna have to go in there and really stand up and correct people that look like them.
Yeah.
Um, and in my case, I had, all black detectives, had a black prosecutor, um, but in my case, I had all white women that kept me out of prison. So it takes that. It takes for people to stand up in order to correct something that they know is going on. And our voices is important because we got to encourage and empower people when they stand up. We got to back them. We can't attack each other. Trying to get some sort of fame or think we better than somebody or their issues a little bit different. No one's calling is somebody else's calling. If somebody's trying to do prison reform, let them focus on prison reform. That's different than justice reform
It
because
is.
prison has to be made humane. There's a lot of things about prison that is not humane. They're trying to limit education. They're living in cruel conditions, poor conditions. They're being messed over, abused, murdered. There's a lot of things going on in prison that must be improved. If that's somebody else's lane, let them stay there. If you're working on wrongful convictions, stay in your lane, and that's okay. If you're working on justice reform to improve and have fair sentences, not only for black and whites, to where judges is not given 1 6 months and 160 years for the exact same crime with the exact same background, you know, if somebody's in that lane, let them be in their lane. So we got to unify and support each other, back each other up, even
Yeah.
if what we're doing looks different. That
Mm-hmm.
helps all of us out. That helps all of us out. But our voices are important in this new day. It's a new day. It's a new time. Things are changing, but we have to push even harder. We got to get our community involved. We got to make sure our community care, but we got to cross across the aisle and make sure every community cares about what's going on in this criminal justice system.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. Go ahead, McKinney.
Um, I just want to say that I agree with what everybody is saying, and the women are starting to stand up because I would say, from my personal experience and what I've witnessed in my husband's side of the family, it's very hard to be an advocate for somebody who is wrongfully convicted that hasn't been exonerated. The whole world is against you, especially if your crime was publicized on television. Nobody wants to listen to what you have to say, and a lot of times you don't get that kind of support. I know from my personal experience, I've gone to every person you can think of for support. I've even gone to the churches who are supposed to be the vanguard of the communities, and they turn their backs on us also for years. So it's a matter of resilience. It is a fight for resilience, um, and making sure your voice is heard, even if you do have to stand alone.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, there are a lot of women that are trying to band together with other family members or whoever it is that they can get support from so that their voices are heard. And as being in the community, personally, I feel like we need to stop stigmatizing our own people for even being in a situation that has led them to incarceration, whether they did it or they didn't.
Yeah.
So I will say that if you are in this fight, I know there's a lot of stuff that happens throughout the process. This situation is built to break your families. It's built to break your homes. It's built to cause a lot of confusion. And you got to stay strong. You got to remember why you came into this, and what the ultimate goal is. There's a lot I could say. There honestly is, and we really don't have enough time. But just stay strong, all of y'all, and don't. It feels like you're alone, even if you are the only one that's talking. It does feel like you are alone a lot of the times. You just got to stay strong and keep speaking your piece until somebody hears you, because somebody will hear you eventually. And as for the people in the courts, y'all need to start taking some accountability, period. If you know you have a bad officer and he may have many misconducts and involved with many other cases, it is the humane thing to do as an American citizen and somebody that is in the law to hold them accountable for what they did, because these are people's lives. These are families, and this is generational genocide that you are contributing to, period. Now, if you can go to bed at night and sleep peacefully, that says a lot about your conscience and your character as an individual. If you can kiss your children and put them to bed at night and say, "Oh, how beautiful they are," you need to be thinking about the hundreds and thousands of families that you have affected by your decision to not take any accountability. Your salary is never going to be enough for the many homes that you've broken up. Never. And at the end of the day, you have one person, one entity to report to. When you dead and gone, hey, that's on you. You might have got away with it now, but you're not going to get away with it forever.
Hey.
So you look at yourself in the mirror and you're comfortable with everything that's going on and you can get up. That's some devilish behavior.
Yeah, but we got to hold them accountable. We
Yes,
can't,
we do.
yeah, we definitely can't wait for them to hold themselves accountable. Like I said, judges have to run for office. Um, Prosecutors run for office. We have to register. We have to get our people registered to vote. We are the only people in America that when we turn 18, we don't go register. We don't take our children to the Secretary of State and register them to vote. Everybody do it but us.
Right.
Everybody do it but us. But when you look at the political power that everybody have in their communities, except for us, it's connected.
Yeah.
Think about the suburbs outside of wherever you live. And the deeper you go off into those communities, they run everything. Their law enforcement is not messing over them because they know everybody in the community is tied to the socioeconomic and political structure. Um, we have to know that those things are connected in our community and really get involved. You know, no judge want to be responsible for not dismissing a case against a citizen where he knows that he should dismiss a case when he knows that entire family votes, that entire community votes, that entire community is connected.
Yeah. Garther Ree,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have any
but
closing comments?
well, I mean, like I stated, it just some of the things is just it's just amazing to see how they go off of their word. Just take a word from they start from county and go all the way through the Supreme Court. Like just off of a word, like they didn't overlook paperwork and stuff like this. It's like it's ridiculous. Like how certain people cases, not only mine but others cases, I feel like like they need to really look into these cases because it's not just mine, it's numerous of people that's going through the same thing, but they just like you stated, don't have the voice, they don't have the knowledge, and some of them, they don't take the time out to review certain things, and which time kills a lot also when you're being incarcerated, because you're not allowed to go to the law library, you have to get your family to send things in. I mean, they may send you a deadline date, but the mail room never runs. Pardon. Well, never brings the mail, and now you have to try to get something stamped by the warden, and he's not trying to help you and stuff like that. So it's basically you have to have someone on the outside as well. I mean, you can do it by yourself, but you can't do but so much. You have to have someone that you can trust, and I mean, hopefully, I mean, me myself, like I lost a lot of people. I lost a lot of people that was very supportive to me, but I had a lot of people that stepped up to support me also. because it's like they didn't believe me neither. Like the little girl that cried wolf. A lot of people they scream out a lot of things and it be not real. But when someone scream out the real stuff, they overlook it. And see, and this is like my case is one of those cases as well as others. I'm not gonna leave others out because, you know, I met a lot of good brothers behind the wall, that's going through a lot of things, like Benji, he's a very good person in which, he studied we studied law together and stuff like that. He gave me some very encouraging words, pointing out some very important people as well as Miss Camp, which I'm very thankful for as well. And you guys also, but I just feel like, like we just have to get, just like you stated, more votes and let them know that, the things that they are doing, we are watching, we are aware, and others
Yeah.
are too,
Yeah.
because when you have their team, I'm telling you, they're a team.
Mhm.
They do this together, and paperwork can pretty much show you that. You go from one end to the next, and no one act like they never seen it. And here I am, right in front of you, a living testimony. Come from I supposed to got out in 2031. Here I am right here today. Home. And it feels good, but it's paranoid also. Because you don't know who's out to get you, and it's kind of crazy,
Mhm.
and don't like to be around too many people or anything like that because I don't know what you try to do, So I'm always, if I'm not working, I'm home.
Yeah.
And like I stated, again, I'm not gonna take up too much of your time of you guys as well, but I just I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to be a part of this as well as, to share my story with you guys. And again to you too also, Cotton, man, your words was very helpful also. And you as well too, Miss Martin. Have I pronounced your name right?
Marston. Yeah.
Marston, yes, you was very helpful as well. And like I stated, you know, we need to get more involved into the system and keep more eyes on it because, it's a lot of crooked things that's going on that shouldn't be going on. And it's taking innocent people away from their family. Like my child, my son, he was a baby when I left. When I come home, he's 10. He's grown. My older son, he was like 9. Now he is 19 and it broke our relationship up. We're just not getting back together now, because of all the hope I used to lead him on. I'm coming home, I'll be there. But the fight they kept putting up with, it's plenty of nights that I cried to myself thinking, like, I'm never going to get out of here. There's too many against me. Like, and it's ridiculous that you have black and white in front of you, paperwork, and you still just slide across your desk like it doesn't exist because is it my color? Is it because my past tense? What is it? Because of your job? Is it because you don't? Like it shouldn't be like that because everyone deserves an opportunity. And equity is very important also.
Yes.
But
And
again, I thank you, man.
you're welcome. And thank you so much, both to you, Garther Ree and Marvin, for being here with us today. I just want to close us out with something. And I ask that you all stay on until after so we can conclude together. Um, this for me is a very touching situation because every day I deal with a lot of people who are incarcerated behind the wall. I deal with families reviewing legislation. Right now we're currently in the phase of a legislative session. And, as the session opened, many families began to question what bills are on play, what's out there. Is there any way? Is there any hope? And now, more commonly than none, because I'm seeing a lot of people addicted to opioids and meth, I'm seeing a huge change in the transition of the legislation that's taking place, and it says that in it's put in place to kind of reform the crack era and what was done to Black and Brown communities who have been charged with many different disparities. And what I challenge legislators and people in positions of leadership to write laws is You all know that you don't have the manpower to take on every single wrongfully incarcerated person, their cases, their families, their circumstances. You know this, hands over foot. You know that the courts and the systems are overflowed with just cases in general because of COVID. I think we're something like almost 2 years behind. You know, if we never had a speedy trial before, we definitely won't be having one anytime soon. And so I challenge you as legislators and as people in positions of power to consider the wrongfully incarcerated, to consider the fact that those who are wrongfully incarcerated are typically wrongfully incarcerated for violent offenses. And every single piece of legislation that I see that comes across the table never has a space for those who are wrongfully incarcerated. And while they don't deserve to be incarcerated, I do think that it is a human right to afford people an opportunity at a second chance. And so the way that you couple that is to include good time so that if there are people who actually did commit crimes, they can show themselves by showing a path of redemption. You can pull their name up and you can immediately see who they've been throughout their incarceration. And that would afford you to be able to take away some of the questions that you have, because we're always constantly hearing the denials of parole, of pardons, of clemencies, not only in the state of South Carolina, but all across this country, for people being denied, regardless of if they're a model citizen or not, because of severity of the crime. I ask that we look at these things from a holistic perspective and we commit to moving forward to resolve these situations, because to me, it doesn't do me any good for you to just say we're going to release everyone with drug offenses, or we're going to remove the mandatory minimums for those with drug offenses. Great. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that you decided that somebody was worth a second chance. But I want us to be able to take a look at the people who are negatively impacted by the wrongfulness, if that's a word at this time, like stuck in our system.
We're going to roll with it.
I want us to deploy laws that basically includes an opportunity for people who have served 15, 20, 30 years, an opportunity to be able to sequester the judge and show who they have become or who they are, and give them an opportunity to say that they are worthy of redemption. Just as you want to be redeemed, just as you don't want to let your fellow police officer, your fellow prosecutor, your fellow judge or medical examiner catch a rap for something that they've caused havoc and harm to a whole bunch of folks. And so I ask you to move in a passion of humanity and actually consider these types of things when you're making your decisions about who is deserving and undeserving of a chance. It's bigger than just your family, friends, and foes who are addicted to drugs. And it is a huge problem all across this country. And I think that there are a lot better practices that we could put into place as opposed to capitalizing off of criminal justice reform in several different ways, or even utilizing it as legislators to vote negatively against bills, but then charge heavily for the violent offenders that you represent within your law firms. So I ask you to consider all of these things today. I thank you all for being here with us today for another episode of Second Chances. We'll see you again on the 21st. And for those of us that missed out, I think we didn't air on Plus, but we'll go ahead and replay the episode so that if you missed it, you can catch it again. So I thank you all for your time, your efforts. Please share this with a friend, and remember to support grassroots organizations, because those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. You all have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.